guys, welcome back to Rain and Pause. I'm Mitch and today I'm doing a little bit of a different video. I'm going to show you all how I built my customized paint spinner. And I apologize for the noise in the background. My dad's doing some stuff in the shed while I'm working over in mine. Now, a lot of people have asked me how I make my cake spinner. Or how I modified my cake spinner to make my paint spinner. So I'm going to show you. So I've got in this box a brand new cake turntable. This is just a stainless steel cake turntable from Amazon. These cost around $30 and these are perfect for modifying because they spin nice and smoothly, and that will allow you to fling a lot of paint off the surface and make sure that you're not leaving too much on there. Now I'm going to build this out of some MDF. I've got plenty of spare MDF lying around the house. It's really cheap, easy to use, and you can pick it up from nearly anywhere. I've also got a piece of pine here that I've just bought from Bunnings here in Australia, and this piece of pine is 7 centimeters by 3 centimeters, so 70 mil by 30 mil, and it's a 1.2 meter length. The length doesn't matter. We're just going to use this to drill into our spinner and make the base. So the way I build my spinner is I build a box that sits here on the surface of the actual turntable, and then I build platforms to go on top in various sizes depending on what size artwork I want to spin. So I'm going to build a 40 centimeter one for this build, and that will just be a flat platform with another box underneath it that will sit over the top of the box that goes on here. So I've got my drop saw set up behind me, I've got my drill and my impact driver ready to go as well. So there's a couple of tools that you'll need, but I'll list them as I go. So I'm going to start off by measuring how wide the spinner is at the widest point, and I already know that it's 30 centimeters. Now in the middle here, there is a central bearing that runs down the center. So we want to make sure that we're not drilling into the middle. We want to make sure that we're avoiding any of these bits here. And I'm going to simplify my build to make it a lot easier on materials and quicker to assemble as well. So I'm going to measure, first off in the center, I can see the exact center point here, how wide this inner ring is, and that's 20 centimeters. So this is about as wide as we want to make our pieces. So I'm going to try and push up evenly to the edge here, and I get about, let's see, 18 centimeters. That looks good, and that will give us enough room around the outside to place our box. So if we make our box, what's that, 18 to 16 centimeters, we're going to cut 16 centimeters off our length of pine here. So I'm going to measure that from this end, 16 centimeters. And you always want to measure twice, cut once, and you want everything to be nice and square, especially for a build like this. So I've got my set square here. This is just a Builder square, an Empire brand. You can use any brand you like, any type of square. And I'm going to mark that down at 16 centimeters. I'm going to take that over to my drop saw, and I'm going to saw that up. Very important when you're doing any sort of woodwork with power tools to wear a dust mask and eye goggles. You don't want any dust in your eyes, and you don't want to be breathing that in. So I'm just going to cut these lengths down to 16 centimeters. I'm going to need 2 of those. Okay, that's better. So now I should have 2 bits that are 12 centimeters, and I'm going to space those 12 centimeters apart from the edges. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is to line up my 6 here. I know that that is 6 centimeters that side, and it's very difficult working on stainless steel because you can't really see your markings, and those are going to go here, lined up nicely on the outside of that. Then I'm going to take my square I've got a speed square here, and I'm going to make sure that these are nicely squared up at one edge. go. And there we go. Now I'm going to mark the edges of where these are laid out. And this is just going to be a guideline for where I'm going to drill my holes next. Okay. So if you wanted to, you could complete the square with 2 more bits of wood in the middle here, but it's not necessary. Just get out of the way. Now I've got my drill here with a 3.5mm bit inside, and this is a wood and metal bit, so I know that when I'm drilling into this, it's going to be able to go through. Now I'm going to try and line up here. We're going to pop in 2 screws, 1 at either side, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm not going to drill through these braces here because that will be too hard to drill through. So I'm going to go about here, line up underneath, and it doesn't really matter where you place these, they're just supports. Get the drill going, and there we go, straight through. Okay, nice clean hole. And the other side as well, making sure that I'm not going through a support. And the most important thing when you're doing this is be very careful with the drill. It can slip and cause you harm, so be very careful with that. Now I've got a couple of screws here. I do have a wide variety of screws at home, and I'm just going to make sure that they're going to have enough space to bite into the wood. And so these are 8G by 15mm metal and wood screws. So that's going to mean the button head is going to hold the metal tight, and it's also going to hold the wood tight on the top. You could get longer ones. These are what I've got laying around, and the metal only seems to be about 2mm thick, so these should be plenty. So the next thing to do is to grab our bits of wood, line them back up in their spots, and do remember that your pencil markings are going to be slightly out from where the wood is. Okay, so now is the difficult part. We need to flip this over and try and line those blocks of wood up underneath so we can drill down into it. So here we go. This is why it's handy to drill, to make those marks with the pencil so you can line them up from underneath. Now I'm sure there is a much better way to do this, but this is just how I do it, because we're just building a spinner. It doesn't have to be absolutely 100% perfect. It's just got to be functional. So then I'll get my 4 wood screws, wood and metal screws, and now I've encountered a problem. I can't get my drill in there. Luckily, I have a 90-degree angle bit. Just going to get that in there, making sure that these are still aligned. Okay, there we go. So once you've got that first screw in, and the second one is there to secure it, you can drill these straight in. There we go. Now making sure that that didn't rattle my other piece aside, which it did. There we go. Just drilling to secure that first bit, so the tip of the screw should just be sticking into the wood, and that will hold it steady for when we drill our second one in. And of course it moved. That can happen. Just want to guide it back into position, find that hole, and rattle that in. Okay, now we've got 2 braces ready to put our box on top of. Okay. That's all we need. And as you can see, they're spinning nice and flush, nice and centered. Okay, now we're going to get our box sorted. So this piece of MDF that I have is slightly larger than what we'll need. So what I'm going to do is trim this way on the drop saw, and then I'll cut it off at the edges. You want to leave them slightly longer. We're going to make just a simple box. So we want to leave the width of the MDF. So in my case, I think this is 12 mil, 16 mil. So this is 16 millimeter MDF. So whatever we cut, we have to leave another 16 mil on either side. So if you're doing it depends on how you want to make your box. You can make your box with 2 equal lengths on 2 sides and then 2 equal lengths on the 2 opposite sides. Or you can make it with 4 equal lengths, but they will join inside to inside. So this one will join on the inside here, this one will join the inside of the other one, and this one will join the inside of the other one. That's how I've made all my boxes, so that's how I will do this. So I'm going to line it up here, and I'm just going to use my pencil to draw a line across here, and that's how we're going to get the depth of each cut and make sure that it's always going to be the same height as these. Then I've got my MDF board here, I've got my ruler, and I'm going to allow 16 millimeters. So now that I've got that measurement, I'm going to measure in however long this one was, and make sure you're always corresponding to the right side. So I'm going to allow 16 millimeters, so that's going to be 1360. So line that up, 1360. Yeah. Now, because that is going to be the length of all of them, I'm going to use my big speed square here, or my builder's square, to make sure that that is nice and square the whole way. I'm lining that up with the edge of my piece of plywood, and I'm just going to draw that down. So now I'll chop this off and chop these other ones, and then I will cut this way. Okay, so now that I've got those cut out, we should have a box that will fit nicely around here. So you can see that it always fits on the inside of each piece, okay? Now, we want to hold this together while we drill, so simple couple of clamps here. That's going to clamp it to those middle pieces, and then another clamp over the top here. And that's going to keep everything nice and stable for us. Now we take our drill again, and I'm going to drill through each piece. You can only do 1 screw, you can do 2 screws. This is going to be drilled through the top as well, so it doesn't have to be too stable here. We just want to hold this box in place. I'm going to do 1 screw in each piece. Just through the corners. Make sure that this is clamped nice and tight so they don't slip away on you. Okay, now this one has to go so that this one can go in nice and tight here. And what you want to be wary of is if your piece does slip away, to blow out any sawdust that may be in the middle, because that will stop it making a nice clean join. Get my screwdriver ready. Okay, and I've got some wood screws here. Just going to drive them in through the sides. Nice and tight. and they should line up nicely with where we've pre-drilled. Okay. And last one. Okay, now we can unclamp those, set it aside, and we now have a box. But the box is now really tight on here, which we don't want. So we're going to loosen up the screws just a little bit. This is where I would suggest making the box just a little bit bigger than what you want. And that's actually too tight for me. So I'm going to take these blocks off, trim them down just a touch. I'm going to use my jigsaw for this because the drop saw doesn't slide that far out. So I'll just grab my jigsaw. There we go. And just going to cut this straight line as straight as I can with my jigsaw, and I'm just going to do that by sight. That is done, that is ready. Now for this particular project, having these sharp corners is going to hurt your hands if you try and slow down your spinner. And I'm going to round over the edge of my piece. So again, dust mask, safety goggles on. And away we go. Okay, so there we have a nicely rounded over board, and that will mean that you're not going to slice your hands open or hurt them while you're spinning and trying to stop them. You could do this with just an orbital sander or some sandpaper and some manual work if you want. The router does make everything a lot quicker, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now all that's left to do is attach this to our box. So the easiest way to do this is, we know that the box is square and sits on our spinner. So all we have to do is line it up with the center of our spinner here. Sorry, the center of the platform. And the best way to do that would be with a set square. And you want to hold it square on one edge. Okay, so we've got about 12 centimeters there. Let's see if it's 12 centimeters here. No, so 12. Let's see if we go all the way around and make it 12 centimeters, if that's where it's going to be. So no, so it's looking like it's got to be about 14 centimeters up from each side. And just make little micro adjustments as you go around. There we go, so 14 centimeters all the way around seems to be great. Now I'm going to mark the outsides of my box and also the insides of the box, just roughly. And this is where you want to be careful with how many screws you're putting into the surface, because they will be visible from the top. We are drilling in from the top. So go roughly in the center of each. You just want to drill the hole all the way through. Okay, bring back your box, line it up however it went on, however that fit on before. this way. Perfect. Now the best way to do this is with some double-sided tape. I'll put some of that right here. Where are we? Here we go. Just press the double-sided tape on. Just got to get it in 2 spots, opposite sides. And peel off the top layer. And I should have done this when sticking my pieces of pine to the spinner, but I completely forgot about it till now. Typical. And that's going to sit straight on top there, lined up nicely. Press it down. Should stick, but of course it's not going to for me, is it? So I might need the other 2 pieces. Come on. Double-sided tape is really tricky and finicky to get the second layer off. And this stuff is the really, really thin stuff. So it's just the sticky component, not the actual foam padding that you can buy from some craft stores. Okay, now let's try. There we go. Flip that upside down, and now we can drill our holes into that base first. And it is a good idea on these top holes to countersink them. So just using a small countersink bit, drill that out. And the reason we do that is so that our screws will sit flush or below the surface of the platform. And they're not going to bump into the canvas or anything on the top. And there we have a platform. So now if we clear off our work area and bring in our spinner, that should slip nicely on top. And there you go, you've got a paint spinner. Perfectly even, perfectly balanced. So you'll know that if you're lining up a square canvas, if you line it up with the center of this or with the edges of your thing, your platform, it'll be perfectly square. Now the last thing that I did on my other big spinner is I added a base to this as well, just a large piece of thin MDF. That will help with stability, especially if you're building a bigger platform. So if that's something you wanted to do, you definitely can. Just drill through the base here. So there's already a base plate included with this one. If you can drill through that and use the same screws to go through, you can definitely do that. I won't be doing that on this one, but you do want to make sure that it is nice and stable underneath. So there we go, guys. That's how you make a customized paint spinner. And if you're liking what I'm doing, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.